Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Cedarville Stories Podcast. I'm Mark Weinstein, and joining me on the podcast today is Jeff Gilbert, a self-proclaimed sports fan who gets the opportunity to intersect his faith in Jesus through sports writing. And if you haven't noticed in recent years, there are more college and professional athletes and coaches like Houston's C.J. Stroud or 49ers quarterback Brock Purdy or Detroit Tigers outfielder Kerry Carpenter staking claim to their faith in Jesus, and this allows Jeff with the ability to intersect his faith in sports. It's truly an exciting time in our culture as more and more athletes, coaches, and journalists are bold about their faith. I'll talk with Jeff Gilbert about this development and how it impacts how he writes his stories. Jeff is an assistant professor of journalism at Cedarville University and a veteran print journalist. He's worked for the Northern Virginia Daily newspaper, the Roanoke Times, and now the Dayton Daily News and Press Pros magazine. Locally, he covers high school and college sports, and since last year, he's been the beat writer for Ohio State University football. Jeff is a friend, and let me welcome him to this week's Cedarville Stories Podcast. Great to have you in studio, Jeff.
I'm happy to be here,
let's keep it calm.
And we won't talk about rivalries or anything. We'll just talk about good stuff.
Yeah, when you win 3 in a row, there's no rivalry, but that's for another day. Jeff, I've been looking forward to this conversation because I know it'll be lively. We usually have a good time together, and it's really cool to see how sports and faith are intersecting more and more. At least we're seeing more and more of it today. But before we get to that topic and other topics related to sports, let's open the conversation by talking about a tough situation that happened to you and your family about a year ago, and that was a fire in your home in Cedarville. Give us a little backstory. How did that fire start, and where were you when that fire started to take over your house?
Well, it's not surprising. I was at a basketball game.
Okay.
I was at a high school basketball game.
Your wife was home?
And she was home. I was in Heber Heights. I was about, a little over a half hour away.
Right.
The game was over. I was heading home. I stopped at a Walmart to pick up some cold medicine for myself. And I'm walking back out to the car, and my daughter calls me, my youngest, who was in town visiting some friends that evening. And she calls me, says, "Dad, first of all, everybody is okay."
That's scary right there.
Yeah, and you're like, okay, well, at least she started with that and told me there was a fire in the house. We're standing out here on the street. Mom's out here. She's okay. The fire department's here. Are you on your way? Yes, I'm on my way. I'll be there in a half an hour. So I got there. So what happened was we have an old house. At least the front part of the house is like dated 1860, right?
Okay.
So there's old wiring in a wall that caught fire in a bedroom upstairs and smoldered, and the door was shut. It wasn't like a big flaming, fully engulfed fire type of thing. There was just a lot of smoke mostly.
Okay.
There was fire, but the smoke is what damaged the entire upstairs.
Okay.
So so since then, that whole about, 1,600 square feet it's down to the studs. And this happened early December of 2022.
Okay.
And, and then of course there's water damage from the firefighters. They did a great job getting it out, but there's water damage. It's just part of the process. So no problem there. It just happens. And what it's done is it's revealed a lot of problems in the house. So this is in the blessing in disguise category big time. They found parts of the house that weren't stable. This is a 2-story house. And then here, about 14 months into this, the structural stuff just delayed this big time.
Okay.
They told us it'd be 8 to 12 months. And now
you're still in a rental facility.
And we're still in a rental house. Yeah, we've been in 3 different ones here in town. By the time people hear this, hopefully we'll be in the house. And that should happen. I don't foresee that not happening. But through all this, it's like, an insurance company's been great. And so all these upgrades to our house, we're not paying for. It's an amazing thing. And who knows what else could have happened. The house could have caved in on itself because they found these structural issues, and that would have been a lot worse than a fire.
Right.
So, God's got a plan. He knows what's best. Yeah. And we are just, yes, it's frustrating at times. Yes, you get impatient. Yes, it's inconvenient. But in the end, we've come to grips over time, and it's just, you have to there's ups and downs with that, but it's like, we know, God's in control, and we're going to have a better house. It's almost going to be new.
Yeah.
If the house had burned to the ground, it'd be rebuilt by now, but it's not. It's going to have its character still. Yeah, and so we love that.
That's what's cool. When you're saying all that, it makes me think of God's grace. We didn't pay anything to be part of his family. He paid the price.
Right.
You didn't pay anything for the remodel.
Exactly.
It's the same story, just tangibly, right?
Right.
So were there other lessons that you maybe have learned from this time?
I think it's a cementing of the idea of God's grace and provision.
Yeah.
I always believed in that. I always believed that. It's just, but this is a tangible and protection.
Yeah.
My wife was downstairs. The smoke detector went off upstairs. She started up the steps, which are on the very back of the house, and the fire started in the front of the house. So all the way to the back of the house, because it's a long, kind of narrow house. And she's like, "Oh, what's going on?" There's all this smoke. And so that was protection, that she wasn't up there.
Right.
And originally, at one point that day, she was going to be babysitting our grandson, who by that time of night would have been in a crib upstairs.
Yeah.
So, just those kinds of things, you go like, man, God let this fire happen, but you can see how he was in control of it.
Yeah.
Because this house is going to be better off. It's going to save us money in the long run. It's going to allow us to stay in the house probably, which we'd love to do. And nobody got hurt.
Yeah.
So, I hope that the way we're handling it is encouraging to people around us. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I hope it is.
That's a great story. Thanks for sharing, Jeff.
Yeah.
Let's pivot and talk about the work you were called to do, and that is to write and to teach future journalists. When did you first realize you were gifted in writing for media outlets and publications?
I always wanted to do that kind of thing. I read Sports Illustrated growing up.
Sure.
And I used to cut pictures out of them, and I don't know if I ever told you about this, but I would cut pictures out of them and put them up, paste them on pages, and I'd write things on it and just, that kind of stuff. I'd keep score watching games on television. I still got, I don't anymore. A lot of things I had like that burned up.
So you lost some memorabilia?
I lost a lot of that kind of stuff. But I had scorebook pages in a scrapbook from like the 76 World Series when the Reds swept the Yankees. Because I sat there. My dad was coaching my little league team, right? So I had a baseball scorebook. So I just kept score sitting there watching the games on television, and I kept those pages.
Yeah.
So that, and then junior year of high school, we could take a journalism class.
Okay.
And then the senior year was what we called newspaper workshop. So that was like the people from junior year who went to senior year and still really wanted to do it, and were like the editors and the key writers. Well, our teacher, she was a former newspaper person,
okay,
and she recognized some stuff in me that she thought I could be pretty good at this. And so she gave me I wanted to be the sports guy too, but somebody else was the sports editor, but she let me write a sports column. It was a monthly school student newspaper that got printed on newsprint,
Yeah, I remember
back in those days.
I remember those days.
Yeah, those days are passing us by. But she also, any kind of other enterprise, bigger feature story that she had, she gave to me, and she wanted me to do it. And so she really inspired me. Her name was Mrs. Winsloff. She's no longer with us, but she inspired me in that way. And but I wanted to come to Cedarville. They didn't really have a journalism program, but they had broadcasting.
Right.
And I liked that too. I thought, I want to do sports stuff. I think that's what I want to do. So let's try broadcasting. We had a couple journalism classes in that. And then junior year, I'm not so sure I want to do the broadcast side as much as I want to do the writing side. So I reached out to the sports editor at the Springfield News-Sun, a guy named Tim Busey.
Okay.
And he, I said, hey, I just want to do something. So he hired me to come in on high school nights, heavy high school nights, like Friday nights and stuff, for football and basketball. And I go in a couple nights a week, and I would answer the phones. Be the coach or scorekeeper on the other end of the phone. They'd give me the box score, a couple details, and I'd write up 2 or 3 paragraphs on the game, do the box score, and we do that big roundup of all the local high school games that weren't being covered by writers.
Right. And
the cool thing is that was a great little staff they had in Springfield at that time. It was like 5 guys there. 2 of them I still know. They're believers. They were then, and they are now. One is Doug Harris, who wrote a long time for the Dayton Daily News and covered Ohio State football and UD basketball and all that. And I still see him around. He still does some stuff for the Dayton paper, covers Wright State, and I see him at the golf course now and then. And then the other guy is Rob Aller, who is a sports columnist for the Columbus Dispatch, and we had disconnected over time. But now that I'm covering Ohio State football for Press Pros magazine, which we're going to talk about, I've reconnected with Rob, and so we've had some cool discussions and stuff, and it's a lot of fun. So there's believers out there in the sports world covering sports for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when I think about, some of my past experience are similar to yours. I mean, in college, my job during the school year was to write and cover high school sports in northern Indiana. It was a lot of fun. And how I think I became a better writer is by doing more writing.
Yes.
So my question is this. So is writing in a journalistic style like playing the piano or riding the bike? Meaning the more you do it, the better you get. Or how were you able to hone your craft?
Well, I read a lot.
That's huge.
I mean, I grew up reading the sports pages.
Yeah.
I just read it. And I grew up in this area. So I read the Dayton papers. I read the Springfield papers. And they had great writers. They had great staffs, and some of those guys who wrote for the Dayton Daily News are still around, and I know some of them now.
Okay.
And so that's really cool. I've just had opportunities to meet them. And
is Arch one of those?
Tom Archdeacon. Yeah, Tom has a gift.
Oh, yes.
A guy named Hal McCoy, who's in the writer's wing. That's a hard thing to say. The writer's wing of the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Right.
Covered the Reds for the Dayton Daily News forever. He still does it some. He's in his 80s. He covers UD sports for Press Pros.
Yeah.
And so we were at the high school baseball tournament together last year up in Akron, and I got to sit and talk to him for a lot and really get to know him a little bit.
Yeah.
And there's two or 3 other guys that like come around the Dayton Dragons baseball games when I'm there covering them. And just, so that's a cool thing.
Yeah.
I feel like I grew up reading that, and that helped me. And then it's just right. And that part of my career, I was more in management. I was a copy editor, a page designer. I was a sports editor of a section. So I didn't write very much from about 97 to 2009. I didn't write a lot. I did some, but not much. I did other things in the industry. That and actually teaching it now, right? So like I came in here in 2009 knowing what I knew, but I know more now because I've gotten into some books. I've read some people. I've watched webinars and seminars about writing, and I've picked up stuff that I feel like has helped me.
Yeah. So as a professor at Cedarville teaching journalism, what do you think are the top 2 or 3 traits that you believe are essential for future journalists, whether they're in print, radio, digital, doesn't matter. Broadcast.
Number 1, you have to be curious. You got to wonder what's going on. You got to wonder what people think. You got to wonder what's the story here. And you have to be curious. And then you have to be, I don't know if there's a single word for it, but to me, the best writing and reporting is an outside the box kind of thinking. Like, what's the interesting angle? What's the different thing? What's everybody else writing? Like on this Ohio State beat, And, I mean, there's 15 websites, 10 newspapers covering this. So for what I try to do, it's like, I want to write whatever it is. I'm trying to look for the non-obvious thing. What's the really interesting thing? What's the thing that is deeper than the surface? What's not the obvious? And so I think the more you do that, it makes you good. So curious and sort of outside the box.
Yeah.
And you said like 3 things.
Yeah.
I think the third one is you just have to care about every story. You can't just that's just another story. Now, every story can't be great. Every story can't win an award.
Right.
But you got to care about it. And if you care about it, then you'll do your best. You'll do the best work you can on that story. And so I think those 3 things are huge.
So when you're looking for the angle, the story to write about, are you looking at it primarily from your perspective, or are you trying to think what the reader would want to know about?
It's a combination of me, the readers, and sort of the sources, the subjects of the story.
Okay.
What are they saying? What are they thinking?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, so, the readers either watched it on television, they were in the stands,
Right.
or they missed it altogether and now they're trying to catch up.
Right.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I have the opportunity to interact with those people that created the story, the players, the coaches, and whether it's a game story or some sort of feature story about somebody, I have the opportunity to interact with them.
Yeah.
And so I have to be curious. I have to ask the questions I think they want to know. And then out of all that, I just try to find an angle that I think reveals something. Like I tell students who are new at this, often they'll start stories that they write for me for class with like the obvious stuff. And like, I already know that.
Right.
Tell me something I don't know. So I always think of that. How am I going to start my story? Because that's always the hardest part, how to get started. Where do you start? Once you get the first part of it, then it kind of tends to flow.
That's right.
But if you can't get the first part, and so it's just like, tell me something I don't know there, and know exactly what your angle is. What is the theme of your story? Can you tell me your story in 2, 3, 4 words? If you can, then you have a tight focus, and then you know how to write the story.
Right.
If you don't do that, you're all over the place.
And if you don't capture the reader's interest in the opening paragraph, it's over.
It's hard. Yes, you have to capture some definite interest there. There's no doubt about it.
Let's gently move our conversation into the faith element. So how does being a Christian influence your writing and storytelling?
Class I teach in the spring semester, it's like the second semester I have with my journalism students. And we go through a book that goes through all of like the elements of journalism, from truth to verification to responsibility to citizens, not your sources, monitoring power, all this kind of stuff, right? Those key things that like journalism, no matter whether you're a Christian or not, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then we also talk about reporting from a Christian worldview, right? So I look at a story, if there's things involved in that story that have spiritual ties or right and wrong type of stuff, then my worldview informs me one way or the other, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm writing about a societal ill of some type, I know what the answer is, right? So what's the answer? The answer, the best answers relate to a biblical worldview and God and what he would want.
Absolutely.
Right?
Right.
General societal, secular society's viewpoints is going to be more program, government, education, those types of things. And those government education can be involved in that, possibly part of a good solution. But, one of the examples that we talk about is a story that was written by, I think it was World Magazine, about like rehab facilities for drug addicts and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
And the story is like, so society is generally going to look at like the programs, like the old DARE, just say no to drugs. And then there's this ministry that reaches out and they want to get
deeper.
They go to, it's Jesus is going to change you.
Right.
Not these programs. And so the story goes in detail and looks at the statistics that they've been able to gather that shows, people that go through like this program, okay, do 100% of the guys that go through, people that go through this program make it? No, but it's a much higher percentage than the people who just sort of do the government thing.
Yeah.
And so you go into that story knowing that this can work, where the secular society may ignore that story because it doesn't make sense to them.
No.
It makes no sense. And I get that. But to us, it makes sense. And we see the difference. And we're like, well, we know why this works and that doesn't.
Yeah. Let's keep going down the faith element. So as I mentioned in the introduction, I'm hearing and seeing more college, pro athletes, coaches speak out about their faith in interviews after a game or during practice or whatever. Do you see this as a new trend, or is this just something that's being covered more openly by inquisitive journalists?
Well, there's probably a lot of factors here. I would say yes, it is more. I would totally agree with you. The trend is there.
It's there. Yeah.
I would say, and I think for a long time it was more, I don't know, novelty or just like, yeah, okay, whatever. That's how journalists tend to look at it, kind of like remember the John 3:16 guy at the football games?
Yeah.
Okay, people got a kick out of that, right? But I mean, the guy had a reason. Mm-hmm. Nobody bothered to ever ask him why. No, I don't think so. I never saw a story. I never read a story or saw a TV thing on that guy, why he did that.
No,
nobody bothered. Mm-mm. But since then, we are in this social media age where everybody can publish, right? Blogs, social media, X, Facebook, whatever. It's all this stuff can be published. And so there's just more information out there as well. So I think that's part of the reason, right?
Yeah.
Because I can just do it. Athletes can post on Twitter and just say things that they can put their faith out there in that way. I think, so that's part of it. But I also think that because of that, it's in our faces more as journalists and as non-journalists. It's in our faces more. And so maybe it is raising a level of inquisitiveness.
Yeah.
That's a good word, isn't it?
It's a great word.
Well, you used it earlier. I think.
Inquisitive, I did.
Yeah. So I think it's raising that level. And I see that journalists are just a little more open to it.
Okay.
I had an experience several years ago, probably, I don't know, about 8 years ago. I wrote a story for the local newspaper on a high school kid. Mm-hmm. And there was a little bit in the story, in the second half of the story, about their faith. It was a house thing. I forget the details, but it had to do with faith and family and everything. And I put it in there. I didn't think anything of it. It was just part of his story.
Right.
So the wasn't the sports area, but the guy was handling high school coverage at that time. He called me and he said, "Hey, I just wanted you to know that," and we talked about that part of the story. He said, some people wanted to take it out. I fought to keep it in. Mm-hmm. Because I didn't want to do that to you. But
be careful.
Be careful.
Yeah.
He didn't say tone it down, but that's kind of was the message.
Yeah.
And I said, look, man, I get why people might, whatever at that. It's not comfortable to them.
Yeah.
Possibly. I said, but my goal, the job for me on that story was to tell their story. And that story is incomplete without that. It's just, it's no different than if he was of any other religion.
Yeah.
If his religion is part of his story, it's part of his story. Right. And that's what this is.
Yeah.
So,
and one story that you didn't ignore, you recently wrote a story back in March about Travion Henderson.
Yes.
And why he decided to forego the NFL and come back to Ohio State for another year. He's a pretty good running back. He's injured a lot, it seems like, but he had a unique story. Share us the little background on that.
Well, he comes out his first day, the day before spring practice in March, and he comes out to see the media, and it's the first time he's talked to the media since the Cotton Bowl, and since he said, "Hey, I'm coming back for another year," which a lot of players did.
Right.
And the assumption is, well, you're coming back to unfinished business. You want to beat the team up north. You want to win a national championship. You want to do all this kind of stuff, right?
Yeah.
And he's like, no, it's not that. Maybe improve draft status. No, he didn't get asked all that stuff, but basically it's like, it's none of that stuff. So why'd you come back? And he went on to talk about, because God, he gave God the glory for using a couple of his teammates to help him see that he needed to stay because there's stuff happening within that team. He said about how God rescued me from that decision. He showed me, he talked about the enemy, and I'm sitting there with several other reporters around, and I'm like, some of them are like, who's the enemy?
Yeah. Probably Michigan.
That's what they're thinking, right?
Right.
I know who he means by the enemy. So he's like, no, God wants me here. It's more about my spiritual. I care more about my spiritual life than getting to the league.
Yeah. He's
going to get to the league. He's like, but God's timing is perfect. And so after the bowl game, player talked to him. And one of his teammates talked to him, and he still wasn't sure, but he was like, yeah, maybe. Yeah, it was starting to eat at him even more. And then he went to church, like, I guess 2 days after the game, and whatever was said in the message. And I wanted to ask him, I just couldn't get the question in, like, well, what did the pastor say that day exactly?
Right.
Like, was there a chapter verse? Was there a particular thing he said?
Yeah.
And he's like, he said, he was sitting in church with this teammate, G. Scott, and he leaned over to G and says, I'm staying. I'm staying. So right there in church, he's like, yeah, God wants me here. He wants me to be a part of this, lead people to him. I see things happening here, and I can't leave this.
Yeah.
That's the nut graph of that.
That's a great story.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a great story. And as I get older and probably a little more wise, the rivalry that we both share, I'm a Michigan guy, you're a Ohio State guy, takes a back seat to this kind of situation, these kinds of stories. I mean, I can really root for Travion Henderson in all the games but one.
Right?
And that's not a slam, and that's not a negative.
That's perfect.
And I can really root for C.J. Stroud with the Houston Texans.
Yes.
I didn't root for him when he played for Ohio State, but the more I learned about his faith, that it appears to be sincere and genuine. How can you not root for someone who's a brother?
Right. Yeah, right. And CJ was famous and still is. He's like, he starts every interview.
He does.
Thanks, my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. And I get high school kids doing it now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a kid from Trotwood High School here, quarterback, 3-year starter. He's going to go play at Tulsa. He started that way every time.
Yeah.
It's my faith, man. It's my faith.
And even if they speak this way and they're not believers, as long as they're following others who are, that's good. That's a good road to be on.
It's a good road to be on, and we get there.
Yeah.
I mean, think about like a guy like Kurt Warner.
Right.
He was vocal.
Yeah,
they made a movie about him.
Yeah.
You know? So, I mean, it's there.
Jeff, for our final few minutes together, let's conclude this podcast by talking about this past year with Press Pros Magazine and the opportunity to cover Ohio State football, which had to be great because I know you grew up a fan of the Buckeyes. So what were some of your great takeaway memories?
A lot of things. It was, I will say first, it was interesting to just be in that environment and just see how it operates. From the
Ohio State football
machine and how the media interacts with that. I've covered high school sports for years, and I can walk up to a coach after a game and our players and get one-on-ones, or maybe 2 or 3 of us at most.
Right.
You go cover Ohio State, it's you and a horde.
Right.
It is a media. It's the most covered team in America. It really is.
I don't doubt it.
They got more websites, and there's 100 guys there. Well, not just guys. There's 100 people there. Almost every time they say, "Hey, we're doing interviews or at a game."
Right.
I mean, there just are. It's unbelievable. TV stations, everything. So that was the first thing, is like getting used to that. And I knew it was like that. And some people are like, I hate that. I don't want to do that. You just make the best of it. I'm a beat writer for this site, but I'm part-time. I'm not covering daily news. I'm not breaking news. I'm not writing every little minutia thing there is to write. So back to that angle thing, I'm trying to figure out, what can I write angle-wise it's different than other people? How can I have a different voice than the others to distinguish yourself? So you want people reading your website, right? And,
absolutely.
And the website numbers are up, according to the guy that owns it, tells me that. Overall, not just for Ohio State coverage, but overall. So it's a growing thing. And so that was a takeaway of like, I get to like do this, but I also have the opportunity to try to do it in a different way. And that made me happy. Yeah. And then, getting to be there on game day a lot is cool. Yeah. Now the press box is closed. You can't really hear the crowd, but it's not the real game day experience. And you're like in the blimp up above there. But you get to you get to be there.
You get to eat good food.
Oh, the food is great.
So I don't want to go there yet, but you told me offline how much you enjoyed covering the Buckeyes in their Cotton Bowl loss to Missouri at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. But actually, for clarification purposes, I should say you didn't enjoy the game, but you loved the stadium.
The stadium was awesome. Yeah, the game was terrible.
So I want to hear about the stadium, and then I want to hear about your experience at Camp Randall in Wisconsin.
So we get to the stadium. I mean, it's just this huge thing when you see it from outside. You can't believe how big it is. You go inside and you can't believe how big it is. I'm there way before the game. You got to get in early, 3 hours before the game, beat the traffic and everything. They shuttled us over from the hotel. And so then I went down on the field and walked around. I stopped and talked to one of the security guys. And then he points up to the ring, kind of back up between the first and second levels of seats. There's a suite level that you don't really know it's there unless it's hard to spot.
Okay.
18 to 20 people in a suite. Did I tell you how much that cost a game? In a Cowboys game?
How much?
$70,000. So you and your 18 friends can split $70,000 18, 19, 20 ways and go watch a Cowboys game if you want. You make that kind of money, don't you? Yeah, right. Yeah. So that's a cool thing. Camp Randall. So if you're familiar with Wisconsin football, at the end of the third quarter, they play this song, right? The jump around.
Right.
So if you don't know what it is, if you hear it, you're like, oh. And so everybody in the stadium, 80,000 plus people, start jumping up and down. And the press box moves.
How much?
It sways a good 8 inches back and forth.
Oh my goodness.
Because I'm looking at I shot video of it, and in the video that I have, you can see the corner of my computer screen sitting there, and it's moving back and forth like this, like about 8 inches. I'm not kidding. And it's like, of course, I'm a first timer in there, and the first timers in there, like one of the first timers sitting near me is like, I guess this is safe, yeah, it's been certified. And then another guy sitting next to me who's like from a Madison radio station, has been coming there for years, says, yeah, well, before they remodeled, there were pipes up here that used to move like a foot.
Really?
Yeah. So it was a lot of fun. Yeah. And it was a night game or late afternoon. No, it was a night game. It was a 7:30 game. Mm-hmm. And it was a nice trip up there. I enjoyed that. And, and I got to go to Notre Dame, got to go to Michigan.
Yeah.
Those were cool to be at those stadiums, historic stadiums. And, this coming year they play at Penn State. That'll be fun. Hopefully that'll be a whiteout Saturday night game.
That'd be a great experience.
They play at Oregon. I'm pretty sure we're going to get to go to that and do that. So that'll be fun because that's got a good reputation for a crazy crowd.
It does.
It's a little smaller, maybe 60,000, but it has a good reputation as a raucous crowd.
Well, we are out of time, but let me land this conversation by bringing it back to the classroom. So you have great experiences. You're a good writer. How do the students respond to your lectures when you interject some of these stories that hopefully will help them become quality journalists? Well,
they seem to enjoy that part. probably have to ask them more than anything to like what it means to them. But I get questions. Sometimes I share a story. So it's like, we'll just be talking about whatever's next in the lesson or whatever we're talking about that day. And a lot of times I don't plan much of that. It's just like, oh, well, this just happened to me yesterday or last week, or here's a time or something that really sticks out from way back that I remember, telling a story of a kid who lost his arm and shooting off his fireworks, and now he's going to go play college football. What a cool story he's been to write about 2 or 3 times. And so you just share that. It's like, that's a story you look for and want to do, and you want to do that. So I just interject that stuff, and sometime on occasion, I get a question in regards to what I just shared. So that tells me that it means something, and it's helpful. And a lot of times it's sports related, and not all of them. Some of them don't know football from a basketball, but
true.
I have some who very much are into sports too.
Whether they're interested in sports or not, everything you're talking about from your experiences is applicable and transferable.
It is. It is. And what they're learning is transferable to other occupations. It is. They don't have to go be a traditional journalist. They can work in any kind of lots of communication fields, and transfer those skills of writing and being curious and looking for that interesting angle. They can transfer that into other jobs all over the place. So I tell them that all the time.
Jeff, I could keep talking with you, but our time is up. I'm overdue to end this program, but thank you for sharing your story with us. And I want to encourage those listening to the podcast, especially if you have a son or daughter interested in journalism, or maybe you are one of those sons and daughters looking for a college to study journalism. I really do encourage you to check out Cedarville University and what Jeff Gilbert's doing in the communication and journalism area. I think you'll be glad that you did. Visit cedarville.edu and search on journalism, and you'll find our program. Jeff, thanks again for joining me this week on the podcast.
You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Cedarville Stories Podcast, brought to you by Cedarville University. You are encouraged to subscribe, share, like, and review this podcast on your favorite podcast provider. And be sure to come back next week when we have another Cedarville story for God's glory.